Welcome to the Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery, where every death had a life and every life had a story. My name is Jennie Johnson.
Hello, and I'm Diane Hartshorn.
And we are super excited
Yes.
this evening as we're recording because we have a returning guest, and it's been a while since she was on. I had to go back and look it up before we started recording, but the last time we heard from her was episode 94. I know. And when we were talking about, which wasn't long after I had actually visited uh, Alaska and had picked up one of her books while I was there. But we were talking about good time girls of the West. So that included some of the brothels and girls that she had written about in Alaska, but also Colorado and all over the West that she had written about. So we are very happy to have Jan MacKell Collins back on the show. So welcome back, Jan.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here again. I love you ladies.
Well, we love you too.
And you also have a new book coming out soon, correct?
I do. Yeah. My newest one is Wicked Cripple Creek District, and it just came out last October. And then the next one, I think it's going to come out in the spring, but it's got a long title. It's Wicked Old Colorado City, Colorado Springs, Wicked West Side. And yeah, and I really had fun with that.
That's right in Diane's backyard.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Literally.
In fact, she has a picture. She has a photograph in the book. She went and took a photograph for me.
Which is awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that one. I mean, I like reading all your books, but it'll be fun to read about the graves that are in the area where we've spent a lot of time, where Diane especially is all the time. So
yeah, a lot of time.
Yeah, as I say, I'm looking forward to reading more about old Colorado City and the wildness that it once was.
Oh boy, I found stories I didn't even know.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
I love that you can dig them up. But today I invited Jan to come back on the show because she recently posted on her Facebook page an article that she had written about Annie Oakley. And it was such a good article. And I thought, we've discussed having her as a topic on the show before, and we just hadn't done it. And then I read your article, and I know you're a big fan of hers. And I thought this is the perfect time to talk about her and do a little fact from fiction. I think what a lot of people tend to know about Annie Oakley is the stuff that comes from the movies and from musicals. And as we all know, those are storytellers that put those things together, and they will take liberty with the facts to make a good story for screen or for stage, which as an actor and a theater person, I totally get. But at the same time, it's kind of fun to go back and find out who she really, really was. Where her life started, how she even became a sharpshooter in the first place, because that's what she really got known for, was her skills with the gun, especially as a woman. And she, traveling around with the Wild West show and all that fun stuff. But there were things that had to happen before she got that far in her life. So I thought you were the best person to have on the show to help us learn more about this fascinating, fabulous woman.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I'll do my best.
Yes. So maybe kind of start with her early life, what you know about that, and we'll just kind of go from there with who Annie Oakley really was, in addition to all the fun stuff we know.
Okay. Yeah, she had some pretty humble beginnings. She was born in Ohio in 1860. And one of the interesting facts is actually to this day, nobody knows if her last name was Mosey or Moses. She was born Phoebe Ann Moses, and that's the name she used. But her brother claimed that his last name was Mosey.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was kind of interesting. So, and the family used both names, and historical documents use both names. So there we are. Anyway, she did have a tough life. Her father died. Her father, Jacob, died when she was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother had quite a few children and became pretty much destitute. I think she got a job at one point working as a nurse for like $1.25 a day.
Oh, geez.
And it just wasn't, it wasn't enough to feed the family. So she eventually was forced to farm out some of her children. And when I say farm out, this was really, excuse me, this was really a common practice all the way up into the early 1900s, where families with large amounts of children to feed would share their children with other families who didn't have as many children, so that they could help them work around the farm or the ranch and help them make money. And I actually knew one gentleman who was farmed out, and he loved his adopted family so much that he stayed with them and
Oh,
took their
wow.
last name. Yeah. So, so in Annie's case, she was sent for a time to like a children's home, and
Hmm.
then the children's home took charge of farming her out for on behalf of her mother. And I think I found the people she went and lived with, because she would never say their names. But this couple was Abram and Elizabeth Boos, and they were horribly abusive to Annie.
Hmm.
And to the extent that she would never name them by name, she only called them he wolf and she wolf.
Wow.
And yeah, she was beaten, she was starved. She had more chores than she had hours in the day. And if she didn't do well, they would beat on her. They'd throw her out the door and make her spend the night outside. There's also high suspicion among historians like me that she was sexually molested or raped. And so one day she messed something up, and Mrs. Booth literally uh, pinched her and grabbed her by the neck and threw her out in the snow. And she
Oh,
was like, "I'm going to freeze to death if I don't do something." So she ran away. Um, and she got to the nearest town, but she had to the nearest train station, but she didn't have any money. And thanks to the kindness of a stranger, this man got her a meal and then paid for a train ticket so she could go back home.
wow.
And so she was able to return to her family. And she was at school one day, and actually, Abram Booth showed up at her school and tried to take her back. Yeah,
Wow.
and the schoolmaster, thankfully, was like this 6'2" man, very tall for that time,
Right.
And but he stopped him and made him leave,
Oh, good.
and that it was yeah. So it was like almost she had a guardian angel on her shoulder this whole time, and but she had to go through the ringer to get where she got. So the one thing she could do at home was she could start hunting for food for the family. So she did that. And
And
then
how
if
old
there
was
was
she
any,
at about this time,
I'm going to guess
approximately?
she was about 13,
Okay,
12,
Yeah.
that's what I
13.
was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she started shooting food for the family, but also any extra food, she would take it into town and sell it to the local restaurants.
Mm,
And she made enough money doing that she was able to pay off the family farm within 3 years.
wow.
I know. Is that cool or what? Who is mom's favorite daughter now? Right.
She can go out and catch the meat and they can feed them and pay off the farm. Like that's, yeah.
Right. So eventually she got so good. I love one of her favorite quotes is she has told others, when they were trying to learn how to shoot and refine their skills, she said, aim high and the mark and you'll hit it. And maybe not the first time or the second time or the third time, but you must practice to be perfect. So aim high at the mark to hit it. And that shows, I look at that as a reference also to her career because she had no idea that she was going to grow up and become America's sweetheart and this
Right.
amazing sharpshooter that everybody adored and have TV shows and movies after her, and so I always love that quote. But anyway, she did get good enough at her craft that she started shooting in competitions. And that is how she met Frank Butler, her husband. He was in this shooting match. He couldn't find anybody to come up against him, and so she went up against him, and they had to shoot clay ducks. And he went first, and he shot 24. And then Annie stepped up, and she shot 25, and so she won the match.
Anything he
And
can do, she
so
can do better.
right? And he always said, right then and there, I fell for her and I wanted her for my
Oh,
own. So he realized that she had a love for dogs and he had this little dog named George. So he started sending her little love letters and friend notes and things,
Oh,
but George was the one that signed the notes.
oh,
So yeah, your dog friend George. And so
oh.
he won her heart and they got married in 1876. And so they traveled around, and Frank was doing shooting exhibitions with another partner. And then one day his partner couldn't make it, so Annie took his place. And so that was in 1882. And from then on, they did shooting matches together. Yeah. And I always wondered what those years were like where she's like, oh, I can't be in the shooting
Right?
exhibitions with you. But now I get to. And I just wonder how she occupied her time during those years. But um, somehow
And
they
how
made it
many
work.
times do you think they had the conversation before that about maybe she should be doing this with him?
Right?
And
Yeah. And
then,
I suspect there was no argument about it. Maybe they both just thought it was best because women,
Right. She could
women
be
were
the
not,
dutiful wife.
what's that?
She needed to be the dutiful wife, and
Right. And women simply did not do that sort of thing, and shoot guns for a living. And so, um, but, they started in 1882 doing that. And then in 1885 was when, um, Buffalo Bill's Wild West found them and hired them to join the show. So that's pretty much her early life in a teeny tiny little nutshell. I'm sure there's millions of details.
so she was 16 when they got married. If my math is
Yeah, 15 or 16, yeah.
yeah, she was born, or if they got married in the 1880s. Yeah.
1876. So
Oh,
yeah,
was he
1876.
older
Yeah.
a little bit?
yeah, so
Was,
she was 15 or
he was
16.
a little bit older than she was? Was he a little bit older than she was?
He was
And
10 years older than she was.
okay,
Yeah, so,
yeah,
uh on the family front, maybe he was that father figure slash husband she'd been looking for
somebody who would
since her
protect
own
her.
father died
Yeah,
so, yeah, when she was so young.
And obviously a man who respected her, unlike the people she was farmed out to. So,
Right.
it's she could have gone in a very different
oh,
direction, knowing
yeah.
what her childhood was like. And she obviously had to work hard to help support her mother, her siblings. And then she went to this horrible farm where, like you said, she didn't ever want to have to mention their names. And so she could have taken her life in a completely different direction, but she stayed. You can tell with her quote about aiming high for the mark. I mean, yes, she was talking about shooting, but like I think that meant a lot
Mhm.
more to her. And
It
she
was so
kept a very
fortuitous.
positive attitude
Yeah.
about things and still made sure that she made her life better than it could have been otherwise.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she was
Yeah.
only in her early 20s when she started touring with Buffalo Bill. I was doing my calculator thing. So that's that's pretty amazing. I mean, when you think about it, pretty pretty darn amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, she had no idea she was going to become as famous as she did at the time. She just did what she needed to do to survive and help her family survive. But
Mhm.
fortunately, that was a skill that ended up being really beneficial to her.
Yeah, her fairy godmother just said, "Okay, here's a gift." And his name is Frank Butler. And what a wonderful thing to happen to her.
So they joined the Wild West show, obviously. And so they started touring with the show. So what
Mhm.
kind of happens from there for her?
I think she really took to the showman life because she and Frank had been traveling before they joined the show.
Right.
And so when you look at the historical photos of her in her tent, she looks quite at home. There's a bed, she's got a dresser. There's one photo I was looking at today, and there's actually she brought artwork with her. And of course, you can't hang that on a tent, but
Right.
she had leaned it up against the dresser in the tent walls, and she had her rocking chair, and she was quite at home on the road, and I think she really enjoyed it, seeing the countryside and meeting all these different
Oh
people
my
and
gosh.
and performing in so many different cities.
Yeah. I always think about, and we talked about this when we talked about Custer's wife too, Elizabeth Custer, the way they
Hmm.
moved around so much, the stuff that they moved with them to be comfortable always kind of makes me laugh because it so often were in a tent, but they had like solid pieces of furniture that they loaded up on
I
their
know,
wagons
right?
and moved with them all over the place. And
Yeah,
when we think about camping today, we're like, what's the most mobile piece of thing that we can pack
Oh
up
my
and take with
gosh.
us?
Yeah.
When you're
right. That's
tent camping, and we
collapsible
tend
and
to
we can
sleep on the
stick it in
ground
this.
and
Yeah,
We have
yes.
yeah,
PPE
it's something else.
reception. Yeah. Oh, can you
Yeah,
imagine? But
But here they were loading up their dressers and their chairs and everything. And in that case, every few days or a few weeks, depending on how long they stayed in one place to perform their
hmm,
shows, like it wasn't like it was a permanent residency anywhere. So they were constantly repacking all of that on a regular
yeah.
basis.
Yeah, just amazing. I would have had a ball if I were, I mean, can you imagine getting to
Oh
do that?
yeah.
And this is the living you make,
Yeah.
Oh,
and today's rock star's got nothing on her.
Oh,
no.
really? Yeah.
And what a way to
Yeah.
see the country too, because if you're traveling, and they traveled by train too, but like you're
Mhm.
seeing the landscape and you see how it changes as you go from state to state, and you see she saw the big cities, but they were also in small towns, and I mean she saw it all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that, of course, comes with traveling with Native Americans
Hmm.
and people, people from all walks of life. And they were like, well, many steps above that of like your common carny. These were
Right.
Right.
Oh,
professionals
yeah.
that were there to do a job. Chief Sitting Bull in particular was very enamored with her. He really he was very interested in her, and he's the one that nicknamed her Little Sure Shot. So obviously he was impressed with her enough to bestow her own official nickname on
I
her.
love that.
Yeah,
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 and
I
that's
thought
a
that was
well-known
really
nickname for
cool.
her. I didn't realize he was the one that gave her the nickname. So that's
Yeah, I didn't either for years until I wrote the most recent article. I think I've written about her, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, 4 or 5, maybe. I don't know. Anytime I have an excuse to look her up, I do because she's just so fascinating. But I also think a highlight for her career was when the entire troupe went to England
Oh, yeah. I
to
Mhm.
was going to
perform
ask you
before
that.
Queen Victoria. Yeah. And something I didn't know, um, two things. One is Jenny, you got to try and find this photograph. It's of the entire troop on the ship sailing across the open sea.
Oh, how
It's
fun.
it's quite a photo. But when she got there, Queen Victoria was so taken by the show, she asked Buffalo Bill to come and bring the whole gang over and do a private show just for her.
Of
And
course
she
she did.
actually met, yeah, of course she did. She's the queen. So she actually got to talk with Annie for an extended period of time, and she called her a very, very clever little girl, and she also gave her a bunch of horses. And so,
Wow.
yeah, for the Queen of England to go, here, I want to give you these
Wow.
gifts from my own personal stable. Yeah, I thought that
Just,
was really,
I
Wonder
love
what
that the
happened.
queen was that impressed with her, though.
Yeah.
And I know the queen, Queen Victoria. I mean, she had a lot of Americans visit her over her
mhm,
course of. I mean, she reigned for a long time, but to give her a bunch of her own horses to say, "Here, I want you to have these,"
right? Yeah,
and then bring
yeah, I
all
thought,
those horses back from England on a ship. I bet that was
uh,
entertaining.
I'm sure because they already had, tons of animals with them. I mean, Buffalo Bill himself had like 5 horses that were personally his, let alone what the natives rode and everybody else had for the show. But yeah, I'd give anything to like step on that ship
Oh my
for
gosh. Yeah.
maybe an hour. After an hour, I'd probably be ready to get off the ship, but that
I
would be
think that would
cool.
be. I mean, and it's weird because I know all the ships for so many for centuries. I mean, they did travel with animals, but when you don't think about it in that context, but they needed the animals for when they came over to other countries. They would need them for transportation and food and all of that. It's just weird to
Mhm.
think about it, the fact that they would have these animals on board the ship, and obviously the animals can't go anywhere. They're going to be housed in whatever stable like conditions they put for them, and how smelly that's got to be.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
if you
I'm sure it was up on the upper deck because they couldn't take them below deck unless there was some sort of a ramp.
yeah, I
Yeah.
I have no idea how that was. I've never actually looked into that, and I don't think about that often, but it is something that they would have done. So it makes you wonder
Yeah.
how those animals
Probably.
did on board. And you think about even today when we transport animals, we transport them a lot of livestock and stuff on trains or trucks with trailers. And you think about the fact that these animals are standing most of the time. So you're putting these animals on a ship that's rolling with the ocean, and how that would have
That was fun.
gone. What an interesting time.
Yeah.
They probably even had buffalo on that because I don't, are there buffalo in England, in
I
Europe?
don't think so.
No,
And
that
they
was
took
an
their own animals
American, they're
because
an
they were
American
trained.
animal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, wow. Oh my goodness. So, were there ever any stories that she shared about the people on that trip? Um,
Besides the queen.
besides the queen, like that was in the show?
I don't think she did. She was actually in her off time, she was very private. And her favorite thing to do in between shows was to sit inside or outside her tent and read, and usually the Bible. But
Did it?
she was that professional that I think it's not that she didn't want to be friends. I'm sure she was friends with some of them, but above everything else, she was there to do a job, and she took her
Right.
job very seriously.
Now, is this the
So
photo you were talking about a moment
that's
ago?
the photo.
I
Isn't
did
that
find it.
something? Yeah.
Yeah, because I can see Wild Bill in the front there
Hmm.
and all the other. That's a cool picture.
Now
That is
is
a very good picture.
the one that's profile, is that I'm pointing like you can see.
Are
Buffalo
we
Bill,
talking about this one or this one?
I can't see you
Oh,
point.
you can't see how I'm pointing.
There's one that's a taller gentleman.
In the
Is
very
that,
front.
yeah, and is Buffalo Bill the one to the right of him? And he's sort of
I
like
can't see
a
the picture.
profile. It's like he's
I
looking
think that
up.
might be Buffalo Bill. Yeah,
So
the
I
one
Yeah.
that you're
wonder,
Oh
talking
yeah.
about to the
Okay,
right.
I see him. Yeah. He's got one hand on it looks like the
yep,
rope, looks like.
okay.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I
Yes,
think that is
that's
him.
yep, and I wonder
yeah.
who the tall
I,
guy is on the other side. I wonder if that's Texas Jack, whatever his name was.
or I wonder if it's would it be too early for him? He almost looks like Arizona Charlie Meadows.
Oh,
The Because he was 6 feet tall.
well, that guy's
And
pretty
that guy
tall.
looks at least 6 feet
Yeah.
tall.
Uh-huh.
He does. And he's got the stature and yeah, I wonder if that's Charlie Meadows.
I'm
Well, there's my
loving
next article.
all the light colored and white cowboy hats. There's a couple of dark ones in there, but there's a lot
Mhm.
of white cowboy hats.
That's a cool picture.
That is such a
That is
cool
cool.
picture. And you have all
Yeah.
the Native Americans that are on there with them. You can see them in their traditional
Mhm.
dress too, all lined up on the ship.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is
What an
that?
amazing lunch.
I'm glad somebody thought to take a photo of that moment and just be like, while
Mhm.
we've all got them on the ship crossing the ocean. That's
Yeah.
such a cool picture.
And think of how many photos that have been lost. There may have been more
I
than
know.
one.
There's
Yeah.
probably, yeah, you have to think of, I'm sure there were other photos that over time that many of the performers probably had in their own possessions that,
Hmm.
got lost, destroyed, or whatever, because that's just what happens over time. But this one,
Yeah.
fortunately, was saved and is accessible.
Yeah.
So,
Stephen Friesen wrote a really great book a couple of years ago about Buffalo Bill, and he was head of the Buffalo Bill Center for a long time in Golden, and there he got into some documents. So there are documents stored there,
oh, good.
and yeah, it'd be fun to get like lists of the cast members and find out what happened to them, and
No, that would be
that would be
cool.
So,
So
how
how
yeah.
long?
long was
Yeah.
she with the Wild West show? How
Um,
many years did they do that?
Up until 1901. Um,
Okay. So, what year did you
yeah.
say she joined? 1880.
1885.
85. So
About
about 15,
15
Yeah.
years.
16 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long
Yeah, and
time.
she would have stayed longer, but for that train wreck. That's the year that the train wrecked in North Carolina, and she was severely injured.
Mm,
And she was in a coma for like 17 hours. And when she woke up, she was paralyzed on one side, and it was 2 years before she could walk. So obviously they couldn't do the Wild West show anymore.
right. So what
Yeah.
happened after her train wreck? Where did her life go from there?
She tried acting. I think there was only one movie. It came out in 1902,
Yeah, that would have been
and
the very early days of moving pictures.
right. And the worst part about the accident was it turned her hair white. I don't know if it
Oh,
was the stress or the injury, but she had to wear a wig in the movie because her hair turned
Oh.
incredibly white. And so she did that. She started giving shooting lessons, and she was doing shows with Frank again, and they just kind of made their way, as they went. I know that this is a cool fact about her. Back in 1898, when the Spanish American War was going on, she offered to send 50 female sharpshooters to aid in the war. And she was denied because women weren't allowed to serve in the military, number one. And number two, what do you mean women know how to shoot guns kind of
Yeah.
attitude, men. So,
Had they not seen the Wild West show?
right, yeah. So during World War One, she made that same a tip, similar offer and was turned down again, but this time she took matters into her own hands. I'm not sure where she went, but she went to a YMCA center somewhere and started training young men how to shoot
Oh,
so that they
wow.
could volunteer to, yeah, I thought that was a pretty awesome
They won't
thing.
let her shoot, but she'll at least train them. That's
I Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm assuming that the YMCA, the young men there were planning on joining, and they
mm-hmm.
they wanted to get some training ahead of time. So that's what she did for them, and
Wow.
I salute her for that because
Yeah.
that had to
Plus,
have been
she helped the
difficult.
war effort.
Yeah,
That was in
yeah.
World
She
War
wanted
One,
to.
right? World War One.
Mm-hmm.
World War One. Yeah, yeah. She was something. I think too. One of the other achievements that she made in her lifetime, for as long as she could anyway. She was notable because she wore short dresses. She wore
Mm-hmm.
knee-length dresses, and she let her hair out behind her. She didn't keep it up in a bun until she was older.
Mhm.
And of course, the purists of America were like, "Oh my goodness, look how she's dressing." But then they looked at how she was dressing, and she actually started a fashion fad because she was dressed so well and so sharply, and she
Mm-hmm.
she was so pretty, and she wore all of her beautiful little medals that she'd won on her blouse, and there wasn't an improper thing about her.
Right.
No.
And yeah, so I I would say that she was a woman's libber before there was a women's lib, but she didn't see it that way. She was just like, I don't care who I am. I know what I know, how to do, and I
Mm-hmm.
and this is how I do it.
Yeah.
When
So
you
when she,
have to think with the way she performed, especially
yeah.
with the Wild West show, those shorter skirts and stuff were probably far more practical than wearing something that's dragging in the dirt, when she's
Right?
posing and when she was on horses and things like, the long skirts just weren't practical for that kind of um,
Yeah. Um,
lifestyle.
I think it was Thomas Edison. I'm not sure. I've seen the videos, but not for a long time. You can find them on YouTube. But somebody filmed her shooting, and there was one where she had to jump over a table and then grab up her gun and shoot a duck while it was still in the air, a clay duck. And yeah, and they're just marvelous to watch. But it seems to me that she's wearing some sort of leggings under her
Probably.
dress,
Oh, yeah.
because
She
nobody was
that.
about to see, Miss Annie Oakley's underwear. That wasn't going to happen. But
No,
but
because
Well,
they're
yeah,
really
because
marvelous.
she was 43 when she was doing those classes for the young men in
one.
World War One, and so it's even then. I mean, that was very unique for a woman at that even at that age to do stuff like that. I mean, it was enough what she did at her
Well, if
entire
you think
life,
about
but
it,
so
she probably some of her fashion choices were probably influenced by the Native American women that they worked with and traveled with, because some of their styles included forms of leggings and things because for their tribes and stuff and how they lived before they were traveling with Wild West
yeah,
show, that was what made sense for them to wear. And I
Yeah,
wouldn't doubt if some of what she came up with for her own costuming and stuff was influenced by that, where she was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. It's still modest enough that nobody's going to see what they shouldn't see. But
mhm,
she could, like you said, leap over tables and do all the things
yeah,
she needed to do to show off those sharpshooting tricks that she was doing
yeah.
and
I
be an
think, and then
acrobat.
other of her outfits, they almost have like a military
Mm-hmm.
shape to them with the button up the front and the high
Yes.
neck collar, like as a man would wear,
right.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, she was her own fashion statement, that's for sure.
So,
She
did she ever fully recover from the train accident, or was she not?
She did after fashion. She never could perform professionally again. I mean, they were, she and Frank were just doing like small time exhibitions around different places. But I think, an accident that bad, it kind of knocked the wind out of her sails. She wasn't really able to travel as well. Although she
right.
tried because they did still love to travel. And then in 1922, she and Frank got in another really terrible car wreck, and that was bad. they both recovered, but it just kind of added more to the injuries she'd already
Uh,
suffered.
Did
And then I think
did Frank have any
she,
major injuries from the train accident, or was it mostly her? I mean, I'm assuming
yeah,
they all had some sort of injury, but
right. He was in another part of the train, apparently. She was in the back car, and her compartment was divided up. There was their sleeping quarters, and then on the other side of the compartment were the animals for some of the animals for the show, and
right.
they were the lead train car. And
Mm,
so the locomotive that hit them, I believe, hit that particular train car.
mm,
I'm not certain about that, but I think that's why she was so severely injured because nobody got killed in the whole
right.
thing. You'd think somebody died, but no. But she just happened to be in the car that got hit.
Mm, that's
But
horrible.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know the circumstances of the car wreck in 1922, but as I mentioned, Frank Butler got her to fall in love with him by having his dog George send her letters. Well, she had a favorite dog also, Dave, and
I
he was a
love the
bird
names of
dog.
their dogs.
I
I know,
know.
right? But he was a bird dog, and he would sit still while she shot an apple off of his head,
Uh-huh.
and he would do anything she asked of him, and she really loved him. Well, I think they were in Tennessee, a couple years after the car wreck, and Dave got hit by a car and killed.
Oh,
And yeah, so there was just like tragedy on tragedy start
Uh,
heaping up on her personal life. Um, and finally, and it was 1926 when Frank went to visit his family. And I want to say that was in Ohio. I'm not certain of that. But he went to visit his family. And while he was there, he fell very ill to the point where instead of coming back to Annie, I think they were still in North Carolina at that point, his family took him to their home. They're like, he's too ill to
to
travel.
travel. Oh,
So Annie went back to Ohio as well. And I think it was in October. She died in her sleep at the age of 66, which is a
mhm.
great way to go,
you're right.
considering what she'd been through. And Frank pretty much starved himself to death. He died 3 weeks later because
Oh,
he couldn't live without her.
He died of a
But
broken
what a
heart.
match made in heaven, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so sad. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I
But
knew
that,
about
I
the
mean,
accident, but yeah, that's so sad.
that's one of America's, greatest love stories right there is Frank and Annie.
Right? Yeah. I would like to see more pictures of them together.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think there's very many that I've seen. I've seen a few. There's a few of them. Um,
yeah.
and it's definitely from their earlier days performing with the Wild West show, or at least the ones I've seen.
And I'm
Mhm.
Um,
assuming they didn't have any children, correct?
Nope,
no.
no children.
And so did she have any relationship with like her siblings? Or was it just Annie and Frank?
I got the idea doing my research. She really never reunited with her brothers and sisters or saw them very seldom. And that also happens when children get farmed out. They tend
Yeah.
to drift off to other families and they stay with them, like the
Yeah.
gentleman I met. Yeah.
Yeah, if they have
But
a good experience.
yeah, yeah. So I imagine she knew of them and where they were, perhaps, but I haven't found much in the way of like her corresponding with them or,
Do
saying,
you
"Hey,
know how
this is my
many
brother."
siblings how many children there were total in that family? Do you
I should
remember?
have written it down to tell you because I can't remember the exact number, but it was a lot. I'm going to say it was like between 4 and 6 children.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that would
So
make
yeah,
sense for the time. It was common to have the large
Yeah.
families, especially if you lived on a farm. So,
part of that was, you never knew how many children you were going to lose
right.
to a
Right.
disease or an injury or something. So you had to have a lot of them in case if you died, you still had help on the farm. But then if they all lived, that's when you were like, oh, I
How do I
better
feed them
like share.
all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be interesting to know, what her siblings thought of her career. Obviously she didn't go on to become a traditional farm wife and have a bunch of
Right.
kids herself and do the traditional farm thing. I mean, she was traveling around the
Well,
country and it
I,
was just her and
yeah.
Frank and other people with them. But as far as, her
yeah.
personal life went, it was her and Frank.
Well, why
I
is her
highly
name?
suspect that she probably sent money home to care for her mother and, care for the family because she and Frank were making pretty good money
It looks
with the
like
show.
there were 9 children total, 7 who survived to adulthood. Yeah.
Wow.
I just looked it up because I was curious.
Yeah.
Yes. So 7 survived to adulthood, but there had been 9 at one point. So,
And
which is a lot.
where did she get the last name Oakley? I might have missed that. Was that definitely was
It was from a neighborhood she traveled through on
okay.
with the show. Yeah, she liked the neighborhood, so she
Gave
so she
herself
took
a
her
name.
last name for it. Yeah.
So maybe
I
her
know what a thing.
siblings didn't even know.
What was that?
Or maybe her siblings didn't even know that it was her.
There's that possibility, or not all of them. But like I said, I'm pretty certain she sent money home, at least until her mother died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, I mean, if she paid off the farm,
Well, she was still at
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
so
she
maybe she,
obviously
yeah,
cared for her mother, if nothing
yeah.
else, if she was making
Yeah.
sure the farm got paid off and taken care of. And obviously, if she was a good hunter, she fed a lot of her siblings for a while there too, with the meat that she was able to
Well, and
get,
she
Yeah.
also, if she paid the farm off, she didn't have to be farmed out again.
Right.
which I'm
Yes.
sure she was super against after her experience
Mhm.
with her horrible
Yeah.
family.
Actually, there's a couple of historians out there that submit, and I'm not one of them because I haven't seen it proven, and we'll probably never know.
Right.
But that was the sexual abuse that she experienced is why she never had children.
Mm,
Oh,
It's just a theory. There's no
yeah,
proving.
that would be hard to prove at this point in time because, yeah.
unless she
Yeah.
wrote it, there would be no way.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
but
poor thing.
So
that's
if
yeah.
there's one thing you would want us to remember about Annie, what is it? And what was the one thing that you found out that surprised you the most?
Oh boy. Oh
I
Diane,
know. Sorry.
what are you doing to me? Well, the one thing uh that I think Annie once said that has always stayed with me is she said, I would like to see every woman know to handle guns as natural as they know how to handle babies. And
I like that.
that's a very, yeah, because you cannot defend your babies if you cannot defend yourself. And so, were she here today, I think she'd be really proud and really amazed at how many women do know
Yeah.
how to handle firearms, and that women are, finally, allowed to or are being recognized for that. I think she'd be very happy about
She could
that.
have been the catalyst for
Um,
that. And she probably was the catalyst for that.
yeah, yeah, I think so too. And like I said, she was not being a feminist. She wasn't being a
Oh,
woman's liber. She wasn't trying to exercise her rights. She was just like, I'm Annie Oakley, and this is what I do. And I think a lot of young women looked up to her to a great degree
oh,
because of
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I think her
By the way,
positive, again, her very positive nature for all the tragedies that she suffered over the course of her lifetime,
mhm,
she didn't let it get her. I mean, I'm sure there were times where she was very sad and things were hard, but like she always kept that positive outlook, and she knew that if she worked hard and she continued to, choose to hang out with the right kind of people and stuff, she was
Yeah,
gonna,
exactly that.
something positive was gonna come of that. So she didn't let that all of that tragedy take her down. She just kept
yeah.
going.
She
Or
had
the
that forward
celebrity.
march.
Yeah. Or the
Mhm.
celebrityness of change her either.
Yeah, she didn't let that all
Yeah.
go to her head either.
Mhm.
Well, there were some in the Buffalo Bill show that felt that she was standoffish because she didn't really want to hang out with them very much. She kept her distance, but and you got to admit, I mean, look at the people on the boat. Some of them look pretty scraggly.
Yeah.
A performer is a performer, but yeah, when you're
Yeah.
with a Wild West show, you're gonna have some people that you probably don't want to or shouldn't associate with. But I think part of that too is uh how can I say this? I think that between she and Frank, they realized that their best friends were at the end of their own arms.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so and they were perfectly happy just doing their thing and being Frank and Annie. and outside influences didn't really affect their lives very much. So why get involved?
I was going
Right.
to say, I'm sure they enjoyed their alone time together and the time with their dogs. And, they,
Yeah,
I'm sure it was a case too of maybe an introverted extrovert type thing, I'm sure
right.
she enjoyed that time away from everybody else and just having
Right.
some
When you're around,
downtime.
yeah, when you're having to perform all the time, then it's like that.
You want to turn it off sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep. You need your quiet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think I'm very happy for her that, from growing up having to shoot and having to hit the marker the family didn't
Right.
eat to loving to shoot. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it didn't bring any bad memories for her of what she had to do as a child. And,
No.
yeah, it was like, I'm good at this, so I'm just going to keep on doing
That's cool.
this. And
And
good
Yeah.
she
for
got better
her.
and better because think about it, when she was hunting for food to support her family, it was hit that mark, get that animal down, take care of that animal, right, and get it on, to the point where she was doing all kinds of acrobatic tricks and showing off and shooting the tiniest things and targets from distances and all the things that don't necessarily apply to just hunting. She was doing that trick shooting that only a very few people can really do and do well. So
She was so good that during some of the shows, Frank would stand with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and she would shoot that cigarette out of her husband's lips.
called
That's
trusting your
amazing,
Yeah.
spouse.
right?
Exactly.
But she did say that her most memorable shot was the first time she killed a squirrel to eat.
Yeah,
She saw it sitting on the porch railing, and she leveled her shotgun, and she shot it right through the head. And she said, "That's the cleanest shot you can get because you don't want to spoil the meat." And
right.
she says, "I'll never forget that I did that." And I think that was her aha moment where she was like, I know how to do this. I can do this.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
that's so awesome. I also think it's really cool that she helped train World War I soldiers.
I do too. I
Like, I
think
think
that is
that's one
really
of the
cool.
coolest facts that you told us today, that as
that
much as
was
she
a
wanted
surprise
to go do
for
it
me.
herself and the government said no, but she was like, fine, I'll just train the guys then that haven't ever been trained to shoot.
Yeah, and she
Right?
wasn't just all about the show. She actually continued to well, her shooting had an effect on other people because she taught other people, and that was really cool. I didn't know
And the
that.
fact that the boys were willing to be taught by her. Like, I mean, at that
Right?
point, she was well known
Yeah.
enough, but like, I could see where maybe some boys would maybe not want a woman to teach them how to shoot. And so the fact that they were willing to let her teach them what she knew is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she would have been, fairly, what? She was probably 60,
Yeah,
late
she would have
50s,
been
early
older by
60s.
then. Yep.
Yeah.
And seeing her come on, by then she was wearing long skirts and,
Right.
dressing more like a lady of that era, but in her little hat, and her hair was up. But I can just see them going, is this the right person? Is this who it is?
Is this a
Yeah.
After,
joke? Like,
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I thought I was very proud of her. And I thought it was the way she handled it because it was 20 full years before that she was turned down going, I have 50 female snipers right here. And they wouldn't take them. And all the time it took her to train them and
Yeah.
right.
find women who were interested in 1898. So yeah, she took matters into her own hands, and that seemed to always work better for her.
This is one of my favorite things about studying women's history is that
Yeah.
so often those little stories like that, those are the ones that we failed to put in the history books.
Mhm.
And the facts have been there, but it wasn't until somebody like yourself went along and said, okay, we're going to retell the story the way it happened. And so then we learned that, there were plenty of women, even in her time, that had to learn how to shoot either for survival. Like, think about it, when we were all westward movement and stuff, how many women lost their husbands
Oh yeah.
and became the ones that had to feed their families and take care of their families and learn how to protect themselves and hunt for themselves. And they learned to use the guns, whether they wanted to or not initially. So,
Yeah, it was a
yeah,
matter of survival.
Mhm.
yes. And
Yeah.
so I think that's cool. And just out of my own curiosity. So for our listeners who may not be familiar, Jan writes a lot of books and a lot of history on the West, but specifically you've written a lot about brothels and, our women of the night and all of that. Annie Oakley was not one of those women. So
No,
what led you to like her
Yeah.
so much? Because she led a very different type of life, still on the outskirts of the traditional woman for the times, but like she's just not one of them.
right. Well, she's one of several women I admire that did not did not make money laying on their backs. Um, but yeah, I like her spunk, and she was so unusual. And you look at, oh my God, there's so many women in the West that are so interesting to study, but she's one that really stood out to me because she was brave, she was resolute, she was determined, and she made her way. And I thought that was just absolutely wonderful that she could do that all while on the arm of the man that she loved. And I thought that was an
Yeah.
excellent pairing.
Oh, I
And
love
he
that. Oh
totally
my
loved
God.
her back and respected her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, and he obviously encouraged her to keep doing the things that she did. He didn't say, take a back seat to me, I'm the man.
Yeah.
He helped promote her and helped, obviously, if he's willing to stand there with a cigarette in her mouth while she's shooting at him,
That's just amazing, right? Can you imagine how the first practice run for that went?
Oh my
I know.
gosh. Yeah.
He knew not to make her too mad, right? Just a
Yeah.
millimeter over and it was all over.
But yeah, a lesser man, losing that first competition to her, a lesser man would have turned on his heel and walked away,
Yeah.
Yeah. And
with
he was
with an
impressed.
injured ego. But he was like, wait a minute, this is somebody I want to spend time with. And I thought
That
that
says a
was
lot
wonderful.
about him too, as her husband. Because you don't hear too much about him. You just hear about Annie Oakley. Of course, she was a star, but he must have had his own star qualities to be okay with having his wife basically best him and probably a whole lot of, on a whole lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was very handsome. I
Yes,
mean,
he
that,
was. I should see
yeah,
if I can find a picture. They made a beautiful couple. If they'd
Yeah,
ever
they
had
did.
children, they would have had beautiful children.
I wonder if there's a wedding portrait out there because I've never seen one.
Oh, I don't know.
But yeah, I imagine it was a very simple wedding, no frills. I don't know though.
They
That's
probably,
something I
they
should
were
look
just,
into.
because she was what, still very poor, of course, when they got married. So
When
they
they
probably,
first would have met,
yeah,
yes.
so they probably didn't even think it was a necessity to have a photo, as maybe
Yeah.
the
And
family
I'm
didn't.
also curious when they got married, they immediately started traveling. So why were they traveling? Where were they going? Because that was it was like 5 years before or 6 years
But
before they
yeah, before
joined
they joined the Wild West
Buffalo
show.
Bill. So what were they up to? But I probably read it somewhere and have forgotten over time.
But
But
wasn't he was doing shows, right? A little bit. And then
yeah,
so maybe they were just following the
his
shows that
circuit.
his circuit. And then, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
but yes, they were a very good looking couple together and obviously very intelligent, both of them.
Mm.
And can you imagine like having tea with them?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
being able to sit down and chat with them in their tent while they're telling you about their exploits and things.
Or just to be the fly on the wall
Oh,
and
that
watch
would
them
be so
interact with each
cool.
other. That'd be so cool.
That would
Yeah.
be an absolutely amazing thing to be able to do. We say that a lot on this show where we're like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be so cool to be a fly on the wall when these people were together and you can just imagine,
How they
those
spoke.
conversations.
I I did look, the two films that I mentioned that she's in, showing her shooting skills. One was made in 1894 and the other one was made in 1900.
So
And
one before her, actually both of them before her accident then. If the second
yes,
one was 1900, it would have been before that accident. Um,
yeah. And there may be more films of her when she got older, but those are the two that where she really was showing off her skills.
right. And there may have been others too that didn't survive. So much of the early film
Right.
didn't survive because the material couldn't survive. But um, yeah, so there's a chance that there were more films made. We just don't have them anymore
Yeah.
because the reality of some of that old film.
Yep.
So I was trying to pull up a picture. This one doesn't pull up very well of the two of them, and I can't adjust it. But this is a younger picture of them, though. It would have been one of the ones from probably shortly after they started with the Wild West show.
They're both holding their rifles.
Yes, but her hair is down. You can see that it's down over her shoulder, and she's wearing a corseted dress. But I have a hunch. I don't know. We can't really see it in this picture very well, but I think it is shorter. The skirt, I think it's shorter.
Could be if it's like a formal portrait, it's probably a long dress because I think that it was the short dresses were her costume for the shows.
Probably again, so she could move the way she needed to.
Yeah.
To do all her trick shooting.
She's so tiny. I mean, granted, yeah, people were smaller back then, but she looks really, really petite.
Petite, yeah.
Yeah.
She might have been. I mean, a lot of the women were, but
yeah.
She was the little woman nobody expected, though. Yeah. She packed a punch.
Yeah, little Sir Shot.
Like the T-shirt my friend recently gave me. No one suspects the short ones, so I wear that one proudly. In all of my 4'11" stature, nobody suspects the short ones. You should always suspect the short ones. But well, Jan, thank you so much for taking time out this evening and telling us more about her. And like I said, the facts from fiction. A lot of people have the idea that all she ever did was become famous and shoot her gun and all of that, but something had to lead to her getting to that point in her life. And it's nice to hear. Well, it wasn't nice. Her childhood, definitely not the nicest childhood one could have, but it definitely, I think, helped develop that more positive, determined nature that she had to do better and be better for herself.
She became, yeah.
It's
amazing.
Because she,
well, like now you've inspired me to write another article about her. Good. I don't know if I'll do it, but I always enjoy reading about her, and I haven't in a while. So thank you very much for letting me talk about her.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you have another woman you would like to share with us and our listeners, I know we would love to.
Okay. And actually, when your book comes out, the new one that you're coming out, we'd love to feature that on the podcast too, so we can.
I would love to. There's some really fun stuff, and I'm gonna knock Diane's socks off. There's some things in there, Diane, and I can't reveal them because the book hasn't been published, and it's not going to be published for a little bit, but it should be out hopefully this fall or perhaps next spring.
Okay.
Next spring at the latest.
We're going to keep our eyes peeled for that. Where can folks, for your other books that you have published, where can folks go to purchase them if they're interested in reading any of your other books or some of your articles or any of the things that you've written?
The best thing they can do is go to my website, www.janmackelcollins.com. Because I list everything and I write for several different publishers. But I have one page with all my books on it.
Perfect.
So you can go there and click. There's a link you can click to get to the publisher and order it from there. And I do my blog off of there. I'm on Blue Sky now, Facebook, Instagram. Sometimes Instagram doesn't always like my photos. So if it doesn't like the photo that day, then I don't do Instagram that day.
You're like, and that's enough of that. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, you can find out pretty much anything and everything about me, including when I'm on the podcast with you. Those are listed on the website.
Oh, yes. And I'll link all of that in our show notes for our listeners. So you can just go directly to the show notes and you'll be able to get to Jan's website. And her books are definitely, I have several of your books.
Yeah.
Definitely fascinating to read. You put your heart and soul into the research you do on the women that you write about. And if you want to know anything about women of the Wild West and different women, not just not just the brothels and stuff, but you've written a lot about other women. It's a great way to really pick somebody's brain about what life was like for these women and what they were doing on the frontier, because it was not, we all know, a very easy life, but so many of them, well, there were several that had tragic endings, but a lot of them really did try to make the best of interesting situations they would find themselves in. So
yeah, they did. And I love finding the little deep, the little funny details about them. Like something I found out about Baby Doe Tabor was once she settled down with Horace Tabor and, there she was living the domestic life with her children. She didn't really like to go out very much, which was interesting to discover. And she also, her maid would make her pea soup. She loved pea soup. I never knew that until I wrote that. You just never know what you're going to
I love
discover
it.
about these ladies. And it makes
That's
them so
Right.
human. We tend to like hold them up
Yeah.
here and go,
Yep.
oh, but they were just like us and they
Mhm.
led very interesting lives and it's fun
Well,
to
and you
know
have to think
them.
about, I mean, Baby Doe had an easier childhood than some women of her decades, but she had some rough times after her with that first marriage. So I could see where something like pea soup was probably comforting. She probably grew up on it and it was probably a
Yeah.
Right?
nice, hot,
Yeah.
comforting food for her.
Yeah.
Although I do think it's interesting she didn't want to go out after she became a mother because that was one of the
Well,
reasons Horace married
it
her.
was, but it was
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
because,
Oh, go ahead.
people scorned her too. So it was probably easier for her to just stay
Mhm.
in her
Hmm.
beautiful home and eat her soup
Yeah. Play with her kids and be a mom.
and
And
be a
she did
mom.
love
Help
her
her.
daughters. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that was something she did. Baby Doe gets kind of a both of Horace's wives get a bad rap in a lot of ways, and they really weren't bad women at all, either one of them. So
Yeah, but
um,
horse doesn't get the rap as always, right?
I
It's
know he
uh-huh.
should get more of it than he does.
Yeah. Something interesting I just discovered the other day. This was pointed out to me by the Victor Lowell Thomas Museum up in
Mhm.
Victor. Ruth Zalewski, who's the director of the museum, found a news article that Winfield Scott Stratton, and I don't remember what year this was. It would have been before he died in 1902. But when Baby Doe was after Tabor died and she was floundering, he sent her a check for $15,000
Oh
to
wow.
help revive the Matchless Mine. And
Oh
I was like, yeah, never knew that. I thought that was a really cool little known fact.
oh
There was
And now
something
it's a
I
very
read
public fact, which is awesome.
yes.
before Forrest
Yeah.
died. He was up in Denver or something, and I think Stratton was in the what's the Denver hotel?
The Brown
Oh, the
Palace.
Brown Palace?
Yeah, that one, the one I can't think of. And he saw him like lurking around outside, and he went and gave him money too, because that's another one that gets
We have to think
a bad
about it.
rap.
It would have made
That,
sense if Horace was outside because his
yeah,
son was the manager of that hotel for many years. So he managed the Brown Palace.
yeah,
No.
it's
But
true.
yeah,
It's another
The
sad one.
story goes that Stratton owned the palace for a while, the Brown Palace.
did he?
He,
The story,
yeah.
do you know this story, Diane?
Hmm.
That
He,
the story
no, go
goes that he
ahead.
came in late one evening with a questionable woman on his arm, and the clerk didn't know who he was and told him to get that shady lady and his muddy boots out of the lobby. And Stratton was like, I'll do you one better. I'll just buy the whole hotel and then I can bring my muddy boots and whoever I want with me in any time. And maybe you ought to start looking for a new job.
Mhm.
Wow.
But I don't think, have you been able to track that down, Diane?
No, I just always heard it from the Homestead House, and was it oh, what's her name that's up there? Not Pearl. There was another one that I thought they said it was one of the ladies.
Oh, maybe
From
Hazel
Cripple
Vernon.
Creek.
Maybe, yeah. I've heard that though, but we could have heard it
Yeah.
from the same source. But I have heard that story that he just went and bought it.
I
Like
mean,
Jimmy
that would
Burns
be a
went and
good
built the,
Western story
yeah,
out here.
just like Jimmy
Yeah,
Burns
could
went
be.
and built the cheap theater because he couldn't rent the whatever the Colorado Springs theater was. They just had all this money to do whatever in the hell they want it with.
I love it.
Yeah,
What a
Well,
time. What a time to be
what a
alive.
time.
right? I know. I think it's why we love reading the stories and sharing them. So again, thanks, Jan. We'll
Thank
definitely have
you.
you back for more stories in the future.
Oh, yay. I
But
appreciate that.
yeah, anytime. But thanks, and we hope you guys have enjoyed learning a little bit more about Mrs. Annie Oakley, even though her husband Frank's last name was Butler. But it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. So, all right. You ladies have a good one. And thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about today's episode, visit our website, theordinaryextraordinarycemetery.com, where you'll find additional links in our show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. And if you enjoyed this or any of our episodes, consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Your support helps others find our show and discover all of our ordinary, extraordinary stories.
You can also follow us on social media for cemetery facts, photos, quotes, and more. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery. If you'd like to help support us financially, you can donate a cup of coffee by clicking on the coffee cup icon on our website or YouTube, or purchase some of our fabulous Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery merchandise through our store link.
Until we meet again.